Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. And we got a action-packed show for you this week. I'm going to kick it off here with just a little bit of, I guess, breaking news. The Jets fired Saleh, 5 games into the year?
Yeah.
They're 2-3. And honestly, I'm not surprised. There had been rumors like maybe 2 weeks ago that he was on the hot seat, and I thought, that's kind of weird. He's a defensive guy. At this point, is it the defense that's really making them lose games? The Vikings looked great. To me, they looked like the best team in the country, or in the NFL, I guess. So the Jets coming out and losing that game, is it on the head coach? Or is it on Aaron Rodgers throwing 3 interceptions? Because that's the game break. Wasn't the last interception when they were going to tie or win the game at the end? They had it early, so I never remember when they have the game super early in the morning. But I'm pretty sure they were coming to tie or whatever, win the game at the end, and he threw yet his 3rd interception. And it just made me think, like, what is he doing? Do they get desperate now and go for Devontae Adams? Because we talked about that. I mean, that was one of our things, another breaking news, where we said that could be a landing spot for him just because the Jets are all in. And if they're firing their coach, they're all in right now. I think he also said that he would like to reunite with Carr, so the Saints would be on the table. I mean, Saints look good too. So obviously, if you're the Saints, why would you even consider that to break up your team in the middle of the year, right? That, although, did Tom Brady, when he brought in Antonio Brown, did they win the Super Bowl that year? Or was that the in-between year? Didn't he win 2 with the Bucs, or did he only win 1?
I'm gonna say 2, but I could be mistaken.
I thought it was 1, then he missed, and then he won another one. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember. But I didn't know if the Antonio Brown stuff was in between, because they brought him in, and remember, he just kind of left. I want to say the year he just left the field is the year they won the Super Bowl, because everyone thought, well, the Bucs are falling apart. Tom Brady's lost it. Antonio Brown just quit in the middle of the game, took his jersey off, and like danced in the end zone or whatever. So you can kind of win, but if you're the Saints right now and your offense has been pretty good all year and you have one of the best records, why would you even consider bringing in another receiver that is it going to fix your problems? Like, is that going to make them any more dangerous? I feel like if I were the Saints, I would try to focus a little bit more on just bringing some extra pieces and depth in on defense. Like, I don't remember, can you remember off the top of your head any teams that have made, I guess the Saints did lose, so they don't even have one of the best records. So maybe you do bring them in. Maybe I'm wrong. I was thinking that they had a better record than they do, because their point differential is insane. They're 44. So holy crap.
Really?
Yeah, they were killing. Their 2 wins, they killed them, and then they lost 3 in a row. That's why I don't pay attention to them. Who did they lose to? The Eagles, the Falcons, and the Chiefs. I guess I thought they won that Falcons game. So I don't know. Do you need that extra piece on offense for them? They're in a pretty bad division, though. They're only a game back. The Falcons are the ones that would be surprising out of that division. Yeah, I guess all the NFC kind of tightened up. You have Vikings undefeated, Washington at 4-1, Detroit at 3-1, and then everyone else is 3-2 or below. So that's going to be crazy. The AFC is even more wide open because the Chiefs are 5-0. They haven't looked solid. Like, they haven't looked dominant. Houston, 4-1. They look like they're a mess. So how do they keep winning? And then you have everyone else, including the Steelers, which people are down on the Steelers. They're 3-2. The Browns and Bengals have looked way worse. And even in the longer season now, are those two teams going to be able to make it back? Like, I don't have any hope for the Steelers or the Bengals, or not the Bengals, the Bengals and the Browns to turn their season around. Do you?
I'm going to say no.
My thought was when they brought in Deshaun Watson, why in the world would they do that? Baker Mayfield had just taken them to the NFC Championship game, or AFC Championship game, and since that year, when they brought in Deshaun Watson, that was it. And the crazy thing was, the reason they lost that game wasn't there like that fumble controversy? It wasn't even like, well, Baker Mayfield threw like 12 picks today. He's the reason we need to get him out of there. It wasn't that. It was like, wow, we were one bad fumble replay call targeting away from being in the Super Bowl. But yet they redid the entire thing. And now I don't know when they'll be back. Their team looked like they were loaded. No. Never bet on the Browns. It has to be embarrassing. That you would just like not even come close. Because that's like where it comes back to the things where I always hear people say like, oh, you won. Michigan won that one championship. Oh, great. It's like, well, dude, at least they won. How many teams have great years and then they don't win? And then you're hoping like, oh, next year's going to be so much better. And it never happens. It never happens. Like you're like, oh, this year is going to be everything's coming together. Someone gets injured or who knows what happens. Missed field goal. A replay, a guy steps out of bounds, drops a pass. Like what was the one with the Steelers where he bobbled it and they said he didn't get it wasn't a catch or it wasn't in the end zone or whatever. Against the Patriots that one year. Could have totally swung things in the Steelers' favor with Ben Roethlisberger in the playoffs at getting home field. But one bad call breaks everything. Look at the Ravens. Always great in the season. Everyone's talking about how they're back. But like I said, until I see that same play calling style in the playoffs, I don't trust them. They get conservative and turtle up every year. Every single year, it's a Harbaugh trait. I've lived it. I know it. So, like, you don't understand what it's like whenever the team doesn't start to turn things on until their backs are against the wall. That's what the Ravens are going to get you. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, and this year, with Derrick Henry being so good, I kind of feel bad that I gave up on my boy. Breece Hall, he's a product of the Jets crap in the bed. My fantasy team's down because of Breece. I can't bench him because he was still like the second highest running back points. But the last couple of weeks, every time I lost, Breece Hall has done like nothing. I think. I have 2 losses now. So, what do you do, Jets fans? Is it going to turn around? Because if Aaron Rodgers isn't good and he's throwing interceptions and stuff, defenses are going to start playing the run and Breece Hall's done. And then that offense is nothing. You need Devontae Adams. So my prediction is that they make a move for him. You don't fire your head coach in the middle of the year knowing that Aaron Rodgers only has 1 or 2 more years left. Because you couldn't, to me, I watched the game with the 3 interceptions and I thought, this is a failed experiment. He's never going to get them not into the playoffs, but I mean the AFC is loaded. He's on the loaded side of the football. So, what's he doing? He's not going to get past Mahomes or whatever. If Mahomes turns it on, I have a feeling he's almost like Tom Brady because every time during the regular season, Tom Brady would kind of just be coasting. Playoffs hit, he turns it on, and everyone's like, that's the Tom we know. I wonder if Mahomes has reached that point because they're still undefeated. So it's not like he's playing awful and they're losing. He just doesn't look as tight. And maybe because he just doesn't care because he knows he doesn't have to play his best to win. I mean, he did, I'll say he can reduce hits, but he did take out Rice. And he admitted that he didn't even see him because he wasn't looking. He just dove at the knee. Which is insane. Right? Oh, yeah, I didn't know I hurt my own guy. I didn't know whose knee I was diving at. Right? It wasn't yeah, I should never have done that. He was like, I was shocked. I just saw a knee and I went for it. Like, that would be more alarming to me than anything, right? If you're another player and you're like, Patrick, what are you doing? They said he might be back sooner than expected, though. So good for them. Good for them. They can go undefeated in the new whatever, expanded. That Steelers game with the rain delay. Was there lightning?
Yes.
Why did they delay that game?
That's why.
I don't know. It didn't look like there was any lightning in that area. I mean, I'm no Doppler, but very suspicious. And then they lost, didn't they?
Yes, because the game... Here's your fun statistic of the night. Did you know that was one of the few... That was the first game where a player was able to throw 2 interceptions in the same game on separate days.
Because it was midnight and before or after?
Yes.
Who was that, Fields?
No, it was Dak.
Yeah, I knew Dak had a couple. I started, like, when it's on so late, I start to zone in and out. And I did watch the ending, and I thought they had a chance. They played it straight on defense, didn't they? And then they gave up the touchdown. I almost wondered, did they just let him score? Because I watched Tennessee do that, and I almost wanted to just, like, figure out any way to get Pittman on the phone from Arkansas and tell him, dude, tell your quarterback, don't score. Your kicker can't be that bad that he misses from the 1 yard line. Right? I don't know if you watch that game, but Tennessee had like a 1 point lead. Arkansas had the ball. Their defense didn't even try to stop the quarterback as he juked around like a Tecmo Super Bowl. And the defenders just stood there like you're playing the game, and Bo Jackson's blown by him. And they let him score, and he's celebrating like he won the game. And then the announcer was like, I think they let him score. And I was like, yeah, no shit they did. Tennessee's whole thing is their offense. They're not going to... If he would have took a knee, the game was over. Tennessee never would have got the ball back. They could have just let the clock run down, but they gave him like a full minute. And they went all the way down. And then Pruitt, he's the coach for Tennessee. Or no, who's the coach for Tennessee?
Heupel.
Heupel, yeah, it's not Pruitt anymore. They said 2 years in a row, his quarterback lost a game voluntarily running out of bounds on the last play of the game instead of throwing it up for a jump ball. That's coaching. How do you tell your quarterback, yo, no matter what, I don't care if there's 15 dudes ripping your face down into the dirt, throw the ball up. Try to do anything. It's the last play of the game. You know it's the last play of the game. You scrambled and you ran for a 1 yard gain. Casually ran out of bounds. There were 3 seconds left or something, buddy. What are you doing? And I know they're kids, but if I'm an NFL guy, I'm going to sit down and be like, what are you thinking here? You do know it's the last play of the game. Yeah, but I figured I'd just pad my stats a little bit, run out of bounds. Didn't want to end on a net negative, right? Like, what's he going to say? Oh, yeah, I guess I didn't know. So, that's what I thought the Steelers could have done. Although I don't trust their offense. Because then the offense get the ball back and they just tried like a dumb lateral where the guy just went down and they fumbled it or something. Because at that point, wouldn't they have only needed a field goal? I can't remember even what the score was. But losing to Dallas, not good. I get trusting your defense, but when they were all the way down at that point, just get it over with and try to get the ball back. The new, I have on here, anything else you want to talk about the Steelers before I talk about the kickoff stuff?
I do think the ongoing discussion with Pickens is interesting because they're not throwing him the ball, and he's by far the best of the receivers. But then it's like I almost feel like they're doing to him what they did to Bijan Robinson in Atlanta last year, where it's like, here's your best player on your team, but we're not actually going to give him opportunities to make plays.
And they're talking about how he's not like a locker room distraction or whatever. Why even bring that up? Who's asking? Right? Like, Tomlin brought it up today in an interview I watched, and I thought, why? What are you doing? You're making it seem like he is. Like, that guy, he's not a jerk. Like, if you said it to someone, then yeah, you're going to think that guy is a jerk. Right? It's kind of what he's doing. Like, that guy, he's not a locker room cancer at all. Like, pff, are you kidding me? Not at all. Wink. Wink, wink. You're like, oh, okay, he is a locker room cancer. Now I see the truth. So I don't know if I'm him. I'm kind of disappointed in that. I just don't know what to do, right? Like, what are you going to do with him? Because I don't think the Steelers need a big-time wide receiver. I don't think any team does, to be honest. Mahomes didn't miss a beat. Other than people to listen to this show, did anyone know even any of the Chiefs wide receivers at all? Probably not, right? They're a bunch of nobodies right now. So, I guess they have Juju, though. Really, I think they still have him. He scored a touchdown that one game. So, I mean, I guess maybe a little bit, but for the most part, teams that win, Patriots, Chiefs multiple times, they kind of put it in on the defense, offensive line, and then they rely obviously on the quarterback. Running backs, wide receivers to them are expendable. Because you're hoping you can just out-scheme the other team. Because you're smart enough that if you're going to design a play, that's your entire job as the offensive coordinator. You're going to design a play that you can look at and know that you have a guy open at any time. So you're going to be confident in your ability as the offensive coordinator to get that play. I'm going to talk a little bit later about Connor Stallions. He did an interview that was better than the Netflix documentary today on one of the, I think it's a Barstool podcast, Bussin' with the Boys, Taylor Lewan, an ex-Michigan player. He talked about how the offense didn't have to even study signs at all because they huddled every play. And so it was up to the offensive coaches to put them in a position that, like, JJ knew the reads. He knew that, like, if they were an XYZ formation, they were going to call an audible or whatever. So they didn't really sign anything in. And so then they didn't have to worry about getting the offensive sign stealing, which then made his job easier because he only focused on the defense. So he was pretty much a defensive coach. And that's why they were, I think he said about that, they were trying to, like, bring him up, and he was on a path to become like the linebackers coach from an analyst, which a lot of people make the jump because you're already working with them anyway on film breakdowns. So that's something that's interesting, like with the NFL. It doesn't matter who's going to be on offense. You're hoping that your offensive coordinator can design a play that your quarterback can read and execute and have a guy that's open. The Steelers' run game, to me, though, it's not creative enough to carry any of the load. So you're kind of relying on Fields to just run around. And I think that's part of his game. But I'm not confident in the long term. I mean, the Cowboys are a pretty good team, so that loss doesn't really hurt. But when you get to some of these other teams that have great defenses, I just don't think you can kind of scheme them in the NFL. At some point, you need your quarterback to break, contain, and be able to make the smart play on the run to open guys. And I don't know if I've seen that consistently from Fields, even going back to his time with the Bears. Heck, Aaron Rodgers is still, like, he threw 3 picks last week. So that's my call back to that. Like, it doesn't matter if you're whatever. Mahomes makes bad throws too, but at some point, it's just, you got to drive the team when you need it. And I don't see it. And I feel like the Steelers are going to end up with like a pick 17 in the draft. And that's when you start the cycle of, we're 500 for 20 years.
I mean, and that's kind of like where I'm at with the Jets, because that's such a Jets move that you fire your coach a couple games into the season. So now there's absolutely no stability for the upcoming foreseeable future. Like, it makes no sense at this point now to make a move for Devontae Adams, even though he's pitching a fit and wants out. Like,
they have to make the move. It's only a second-round pick. You've already shown with the quarterback or the coach getting canned that this is basically Aaron Rodgers calling the team. And Aaron Rodgers most likely would want Devontae Adams. It's not going well for the Raiders. Get him in there and say, look, we were depending on you. And at least if things go haywire, you get the extra jersey sales, like a Pirates move, right? Where at least you have some optimism. I don't know if you knew this, but I've been following closely because our boy Rick, he talked about how the Pirates were getting things like they're going to improve, right? And it's very clear that they're never going to improve. That finally there were some protests in Pittsburgh today. I think it was today or maybe yesterday about like a change in ownership, but it was like only 6 people. And they're trying to get it to improve. So like they start with 6 people that are diehard Pirates fans, and there's not that many left. I've been in that box office, right? You can just walk right up. There's not a big line to get in that game. So they start, and the protests are starting, they can maybe push Nutting out. And then maybe they'll see some change. Because I still see people down here in the South that randomly have a Pirates hat on. And I'm always like, why would you even wear that? Is it you just like Pirates? Or like you're from Pittsburgh? Because sometimes it's the P. I have seen a lot of the old school like Pirates logo. So I think maybe they just like Pirates. It's not like Talk Like a Pirate Day, is it? I don't know. I don't keep up with that. But I'm wondering now if there's going to be some pushback because the Steelers could be right around 500 again. Pirates suck. Not even. I saw the one guy, one of their writers in Pittsburgh, put this article out that made me laugh because they end up with like 70-something wins. And he wrote, it might have been 70-something wins, but with all the close calls, it was really like 80, 84 or something. And I thought, how much are they paying you to write this garbage? You're just pretending that they won more games now? That's like, I don't even know who that would be the equivalent of like in college football. It's almost like, hey, yeah, we made a bowl game. Might not have been whatever, but hey, we win a bowl game. We played in that Backstreet Tire Bowl killer against Idaho State. Great game, great win. And it's like, no, what are you talking about? That's how I feel like talking to some of these Pirate writers. Like, you pretend you won 80 games? Like, no, the numbers are the numbers, dude. And it's the same. I think it was the exact same record as last year. And one guy wrote an article about how they improved. And the first comment was, dude, the record was literally the same as last year. How did they improve? Like, what you can't lie with the facts in sports. Aaron Rodgers throwing 3 picks. Russell Wilson, he's not good. He's not going to come in. He's not going to be the savior. Unless, like I said, they're saving. Russell Wilson's probably good for about 5 games a year. So if they can time that up with the playoffs, hell, they could win the Super Bowl, right? His first 5 games are like week 18, and then they just win 5 games in a row, and they hope that the Super Bowl isn't his first bad game. Because with him being how old, you don't know. So, but the one thing I want to talk about, kickoffs versus punts, right? We've talked about this before. But with that new kickoff thing, I thought, all right, let's see how this goes. They read a stat during one of the games I was watching. Only like 15% of these new kickoffs are getting returned, which is insane, right? They said last year was like 35%. This change was supposed to create more kickoff returns. But because the ball's hanging in the air and it's harder to block like 10, right? Because at least with everyone running down the field, there was some crisscrossing on like guys blocking. I mean, that's probably what's causing the injuries, right? So you could have like your own return wall set up, but because they're running from 10 yards away, it's harder to block them one-on-one. You don't have guys that can block in space that are from defenders that are juking you, right? It's hard to do. Even receivers that block are like considered anomalies, like Hines Ward, where they're like, man, that guy can block. Insane. Put him in the Hall of Fame. Doesn't matter what his stats are. He can block as a receiver. Like, you're not going to have 10 of those dudes blocking on that line. So teams are just not running the ball out, because I've seen it over and over. All it takes is one guy to break that, make a crazy tackle in space, and they're starting at the 15-yard line. And the craziest thing, the reason I brought this up, is the announcer said, hey, instead of the first guy, I forget who was talking. They're all annoying to me. But the first guy said, hey, we should bring the touchback back to 20 yards. The common sense solution, right? If people are fair catching to get it on the 25 or the 30, whatever it is now, bring it back to the 20. That way, the odd chance that you get tackled at the 15 or whatever, it might be worth it, because you might be able to consistently get out to the 25 by returning. Right now, you might be able to consistently get out 25, or you can just fair catch it and get out there automatically. There's no gamble of loss. It's not like people are returning these for touchdowns. Then the guy said, well, maybe we'll just move the kicker back. And I thought, so you're going to have the guy run up to the front end of that zone where he's going to get creamed like on a punt? Because all it takes is the same guy that's breaking through the block line. Because, wait, do they have to move when he touches the ball or when it's kicked? Doesn't he have to touch it, though?
They have to wait for one of the offensive guys to touch it.
So I guess maybe that might work, but you're still going to be, the receiving team can kind of see where you're going, and they can kind of crunch on you. I feel like because they've said, well, some of these special teams coaches are coming up with some crazy ways to split that defense blocking. And I'm like, yeah, because everyone's just lined up. You think about like a defensive line doing a twist or some kind of stunt. They can just do that on the kick return. And these returners don't know, because they're not really returning them to get enough practice, right? It's a brand new thing. It's not like they had 10 years of high school and college or whatever, middle school, of returning to where they can kind of read, because you can't read on it. So I'm going back to my original, just do punts. I wanted to see more onside kicks. Did I say the stat on that? It was like onside kicks get recovered at like 10% or less. And now you have to declare it. So there's not even the surprise anymore. And they said that since that, it's been lower. They didn't give a number. So I wrote the numbers down just because, I don't know, I didn't verify them. But those are the numbers they said on the broadcast of whatever game I was watching. So 15% of return, awful, considering it was like 30-something, which isn't even good either. That was not even 50%. And then you might as well just go, when it's a commercial and a kickoff, I honestly haven't been watching. You can flip to another game or go for like a quick walk and go to the bathroom, get some more drinks, get some food, and not have to worry about missing the kickoff, because nothing exciting is going to happen. And that's what really made, because I was thinking, I thought, you know what, I haven't really even been watching these to know, because mentally I know nothing's going to happen. And that's the solution. I'm glad college didn't cave and start to do it. I would almost like punt formation, because at least you're going to get the fake punt, or heck, maybe someone will come up with well, I'm going to regret saying this, because I think in my head, you know how there's those coaches I saw Dion do this, your boy, where they have the field goal unit line up like super weird, and it never works, right? Everyone's seen it. It's been the same thing since I played like 30 years ago, that gimmick. And then they all have everyone run in, and then they try to set up a return. But then what they don't realize is whenever you're doing that, your own blockers are going to be tired. Like, these are heavy dudes for Colorado. They may not have a good line. Why are you making them run out to the hash and then back in and then expect them to block someone? Why are you doing that? And so maybe by doing a punt kickoff, you're going to get some of those creative coaches that are doing, stunts on the return blocking or whatever, that maybe now we'll see weird punt formations that I'll regret bringing that up. Like a triple stack or like a trips punt formation where those three guys all run routes and all the punters are like rugby style ex high school quarterbacks that can at least kind of throw, you know? Because if you put a guy out there that was just like, oh, he's an accurate quarterback from high school, he only throws 30 yards. But on these punt returns, you don't, in college, like if they switch to the NFL model, you would have a guy that could do a rugby style punt that might have been like a high school quarterback because his school was like in Idaho and he played every position. And then he can throw it every time. And you just have him roll out to the right and you have a trips formation out there. And those three dudes run different routes. And then your kick return or punt return guy is shitting his pants every week. Because he's like, are they going to punt it? Is he going to throw out of this formation? No one's ever done that. Maybe they should call me up and I could be a special teams coach. And that could be our thing. Because it's insane. You're like, is he going to throw it? But if you hit on a fake punt, what was that guy that goes for it on 4th downs? And he says he only has to like hit it 30% of the time or something for it to be effective in a game. Isn't it something low like that? Because instead of punting, you have 0 chance of getting the first down. And as long as you're like from the 40 up, your own 40, like it's not too bad to punt. But what if you brought that back to the 30 because your guy can read it? Almost like an RPO, but we call it a KPO, kick pass option. Right? All the defense is going to crash to that one side, right? But you can do an overloaded formation. I think that would be legal. Trips. Have the center be like the second guy on the left side so that all your blockers are on the right side. So if they try to like crash hard, because you don't really have to roll out to hit a slant. You don't have to do that.
No.
But on a rugby style kick, you could do that. Or even just split a guy out to the left too. I mean, you're always going to have a gunner anyway. Or is that not that many guys? I'll have to draw it up. Maybe I'll draw it up and I'll share something on Twitter or something. But that would be my thing, right? You have a safety valve guy. He runs a dig. You throw him back across the field. But what the hell? You're supposed to be punting anyway. Right? What's the worst case scenario? They intercept it. That's a good situation. That's at least like a 10-yard punt. I've wondered why, because you're at high school, right?
Yes.
I've seen high school guys punt at 5 yards. Why not just do that? Keep your quarterback out there, have him pooch punt, but have him do a rollout and try to just pass it. The other coach isn't going to have any idea what the hell you're doing. If you ran a trips out there to the right, I'm not joking, dude. I'm breaking film right here on the show. I'm going to draw this up for you. I want you to do it. Tell coach, be like, hey, I had a crazy night last night. I got on the podcast. We have an idea now for our punts. How good's your punter? What does he kick? 30 yards?
Well, it depends. It's inconsistent, but it's
inconsistent. See, just have your quarterback. Well, it depends if your quarterback can throw, though.
Well, our quarterback currently has a club arm, so.
Well, there has to be a kid that can kind of do both. You know how like they always put like some teams I've seen where they put like the biggest kid out there punting because he can boom it, but he's also the tackle. So then he's out there and he's moving really slow, and you're like, this is going to get blocked by that backup tackle not being able to block his guy. Or if he gets it off, it's 50 yards. So it adds an element to it, right? But then you bring in the quarterback, I'm telling you. Look at the stats. You have the access to the spreadsheet. How many 4th and like 5s do you have where your guy could run it out and either run, because he can still run the ball, or just dink on a slant, or like a zag, do like a out and in. I don't know what terminology you use. Have one guy run a fade or a wheel off it. He could be wide open. You can get a touchdown. And then next thing you know, you're getting called and you're speaking at coaching clinics. And I'll be Wink Martindale, dude. I'll come in and I'll talk about how I was the inventor. I was the OG, and I'll wear cutoff shirts. I don't know if you saw him, or some people might not know. Wink Martindale used to coach at like the Giants, right? But I don't know if it was the last Michigan game or the game before, and I forgot to mention it. The announcer was like, I don't know if he was jealous of him or he was taking shots at the way Wink Martindale dressed. And he was saying something like, oh yeah, he's looking tough over there with that outfit. Like, you think he leaves his house thinking like he's cool? And I'm thinking, who is this guy? What is this, high school? What am I listening to? Gossip Table? Like, who cares how the guy dresses? Right? Belichick wore those cutoff sweatshirts. I've never really seen that take off anywhere. Right? It's not like I go out to the bar and I see a bunch of guys dressed like Belichick. I'm not going to expect to see people dressed as Wink Martindale. But I understand it.
Although there's your Halloween costume, you can be Wink Martindale.
No, if I have to go as Connor Stallions, dude, in a Central Michigan outfit. Or no, I was supposed to go as Brohio. Damn, that's already been a month and I'm forgetting. Brohio, I could even pull that outfit off. Just like a glasses and a hat, and everyone's gonna. There is one guy that I talked to that would recognize Brohio because I made a Brohio comment, and a guy I know was like, "Oh my gosh, I know who Brohio is," and I thought only one person. I don't even know if I mention Connor Steins, no one might not know who that is. So I got to be careful who I'm out with, right? Not a lot of people know Connor Steins. They know the Michigan sign stealing thing, which still isn't illegal. But who knows? I don't think people would know who Wink Martindale is. I don't even think people would get a Belichick. Like if I wore a Patriots hoodie and cut the sleeves off, would anyone even know that was a Belichick?
Maybe.
Some diehard girl from Boston with an accent. That's what you get. Talking to you. Could ruin your night. I don't know. Maybe you'd like that.
So angry.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Why, you want Boston fans talking to you?
Yes, if it helps our show, yes. Yes, well, I do.
Hey, I do like the Celtics, man. And the Celtics are picked to win the league again. Which is good because a week ago I read how, because the owner was selling the team, the championship isn't going to be as celebrated like others because of the sadness of the owner. And I thought, who the hell gives a shit about the owner? Like, why would you care if the owner sold the team? It's like a businessman. Why would you want him to celebrate with the team? I saw, was it the Falcons or someone? They put their owner in the Ring of Honor and people were cheering. If I was at that game, I would have 100% been booing. What did the owner do? He did nothing. How many championships do the Falcons have? Isn't it 0? Did I talk about this on the show? I feel like I might have, or maybe I just have this in my head. It's like from King of the Hill where Dale Gribble has his own exterminating business and he still did an employee of the month and named himself every month. That's what the owner from the Falcons or whatever, putting himself in the Ring of Honor. I feel like I had this deja vu where I'm complaining about, I think it was the Falcons, probably the wrong team. But any owner putting themselves in the Ring of Honor is such a crock of shit that I don't understand how any fan could care. That's why people talk about, well, you cheer for the Packers now? It's like, yeah, I'm an owner. Who you cheering for? The Fighting Arthur Blanks or whatever? I don't even know who the owners are of these teams. Jerry Jones? You send him a check every month? He's in the box. You're at home watching with a shirt you haven't changed in 3 days. What are you doing? Why do you care who the owner is? That's why I like the Braves. Braves have the ownership deal. The Broncos almost got an ownership deal like that. Heck, I would have bought Broncos stock. Braves win, stock goes up. Braves lose, it still kind of goes up because it's like sports is kind of just like its own fake thing where people it just stays popular unless it's like cricket or something or horse racing where it's like going down and only a very select few people even talk or know about horse racing anymore. Right? Or people pretend when they're in like certain company. But I don't know. That's the one thing that I get people talking about. My buddy's a Niners fan. And in the Stallions interview, he talked about how he had players he was working with that he would send them his scouting breakdowns. And then they were having through the roof playoff performances, dude. Because he was giving him stuff that was easily recognizable. Like, he talked about him, the Chiefs, I think it was their first Super Bowl, 2019 against the Niners, where he said, hey, Frank Clark, who's a Michigan guy, Frank knew him from his breakdowns in Michigan. Michigan was off or whatever, didn't have a good year, so they're not playing in the playoffs or anything. He said, hey, can I have you do some of these for me? He said, yeah, sure, I'll work with you. I'm not doing anything. Breaks down for the Chiefs all their formations, and their guys are giving it away based on their stance. 3-point stance, oh, that's going to be a run 15 out of 16 times. His hands are together on his hips. That's a pass protection, like 18 out of 19 times, which is such a high percentage that all Frank has to do is look at the guy and boom. And he said that going back through the tape of the Super Bowl, 100% of the time, based on whatever he gave, like touching hands, pass, 3-point stance, run, he said 100%. He was able to predict 100% from that spreadsheet. It wasn't like 15 out of 16. He said the Niners offensive line gave the play away 100% of the time. And I think he said Frank Clark got a game-ending sack in that game based on that data. That was the year, I think the Niners, did they have a lead or whatever, and they choked? And they tried to come back with Garoppolo.
I think you're right.
Connor Stallions broke that game, dude. Before anyone even knew who he was. The Niners had tells, because people don't probably remember this. This is probably an insane thing, which someone said to me that, hey, are you guys talking about like old guy things on your podcast where you're like referencing things from like 20 years ago that no one knows about because like, you guys have known each other for so long? But there was a tell when Rich Rod was at Michigan, which is like way even before, like I even went there or anything, but where they said that if you watch the running back lineup, if he was a yard up or a half yard up in front of the quarterback, you could tell that it was going to be the zone, like the raid play. Where if he was back, then it was going to be a pass play. And they said that he never adjusted. So some teams in the Big Ten caught on to that. And you can easily tell your linebackers, like, hey, watch where the running back lines up because you're on the field. You're only like, 10 yards away from him? You can easily see if he's in front of the quarterback or not. Watching on TV, you might not be able to tell. Like watching on TV, how many people notice that the Niners, Staley, I think he said it was, puts his hands together on pass plays every time. But if you watch the film, you can easily tell that. That's like whenever I was in the booth for your game. That's the only info I was giving you, like little things like that. Like, yo, that D lineman's small. They keep putting him in the A gap. You should just run at him because, like, what's he going to do? He's so small. He's not cutting, like, underneath. You can blow him off the ball, and you can probably get 3 yards every time. And that's something like, because I can't call plays or anything, but that's the kind of job that a scout can kind of look at. Look at things just from a different angle and see, why is that play getting blown up? Is that guy showing every time? Like he said that if one of the quarterbacks, if he tapped his head or something, it was like a hot route go every time. So then the D-back knows to just kind of back off. And then it helps him in like the one-on-one battles or whatever. So that's some of the stuff that not only is it accurate, but it's crazy because it works. It's not really sign stealing. And in the NFL, who knows? Stallions could get a job like that. They need guys that just break down film and pick up tendencies. Now, Joe Staley probably heard that and probably hates himself. Because you can go back and see it's like what, on the NFL Network? Go rewatch a game and see how he changes his stance.
Yeah.
Probably ruined his day. Especially because they called him out. And he still had the card because he put it in his manifesto. So, but before we get into that, anything else you want to talk about for the NFL?
Trying to think if I have anything else for the NFL. No, I think that's about it.
You can tell when my fantasy team does bad. I don't really have a lot of fun things to talk about. But I did think the Super Bowl thing was great breaking news. Because imagine being a 49ers fan and being so close, and one guy on the defensive line has 5 sacks in those 3 games in the playoffs. Game-ending sack or tackle. They said it's the only time one guy has made the game-ending tackle or sack in every single game in the same playoffs. Frank Clark, and he had the info from a scout that wasn't even NFL like really affiliated, because players can hire whomever they want. That was my argument all along. They can hire analysts left and right as long as they're not like in the locker room working directly with the team, right? Bama had like 100 million analysts.
Well, that's exactly what I was just going to say. The Bama made that move famous.
Well, that's the one thing that he brought up too, or I guess he didn't bring it up. One of the other guys on the podcast brought up the point that when Michigan played Bama, I think it was last year in the Rose Bowl, they hired Michigan's ex-linebacker coach that was unemployed right before the game. Why did they hire him? Why did the NCAA not care? Right? Because why would you hire him there? He was available all year long. You could have hired him at any point and made him an analyst. Oh, they only needed him because they were playing Michigan. That's 100% what they were doing. 100%. But because that was okay, that we'll see what happens. I want to put that at the end, though. So let's get into some college stuff. Bama, speaking of them, loses to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is not a top team by any stretch of the imagination. They had an overtime win against Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech has not looked good. They lose to Georgia State. Georgia State got hammered by Georgia Tech. I think it was Georgia State. And so they beat Bama. Bama's defense got exposed. That's the one thing. If you remember last year at Washington, all the pundits kept saying, oh, Washington's defense, like his defense they're eventually going to get exposed. Oh, they're going to lose to Oregon. They're not going to be able to stop them on defense. And eventually, it never happened. But with Bama and all the talent they have, they should not be struggling stopping. I knew Vanderbilt ran like a power run type offense or whatever they were doing. Very creative with it. But Bama had the horses that it should not have mattered. And now, to me, the SEC is up in smoke. Although, I will say, I've been preaching the entire year. Texas is the best team in the country. They play Oklahoma, they play Bama, and then they play Vanderbilt. I could see them losing to Bama. It depends if Quinn Ewers is healthy. Let me put it that way. Quinn Ewers is the best quarterback in the country. I'm still sticking with that.
Isn't he done for the year?
Is he? I thought he was coming back.
Let me check.
I'm going to check that too, because that might change my perspective. Then they wouldn't be the number one team.
Because he has a torn labia.
Is that what it is?
No. I don't know what it is.
Jesus. Isn't that a woman's thing?
Yes.
Bro. I don't know what these guys have. He was at Ohio State at some point.
Oh, I don't know what it is.
He's been practicing though.
Yeah, I think he'll likely end up playing.
I thought it was just a strained oblique or something in his stomach where he couldn't throw, like it was hurting him to throw. And so he rested. Maybe they don't need him for Oklahoma. Oklahoma's been so inconsistent. Right?
Yeah.
So, we'll see what happens. I don't think Arch Manning's as good because he still hasn't had as many starts under his belt. But for them, we got to go. They got to win. They got to beat Oklahoma. They can lose against Bama or whatever. I don't know what's going to happen in the SEC because they still have the unbalanced schedule. And their schedule's even worse than the Big Ten because it's only 8 games. And they had that meeting between the Big Ten and the SEC about scheduling. One thing I've heard directly is that the Big Ten is kind of pushing back, telling them that, hey, if you guys want to schedule you have to do the 9-game schedule, or we have to have the same thing. Whether it's 9 or 8 games, it has to be a level playing field. Because we don't want the stuff that's happening now where, oh, Vanderbilt beats Texas or beats Bama. Are they good? Oh, wait, if they wouldn't have lost to Georgia State, Vanderbilt probably would have been ranked. It doesn't matter what happened like to the other games that they lost, because I think they're like 2 losses, but they would have been ranked because of the strength of the SEC, and there would be no way to dispute that. And that's kind of what my concern is going forward. If the Big Ten and the SEC do the scheduling agreement, and let's say they go to a 9-game schedule, that only leaves 2 games left of the year, where if you get your heavy hitters and they're not playing another conference like the ACC or the Big 12, it doesn't matter how many great programs are in those. If they just don't do it, like when Notre Dame said, hey, we're not scheduling the Big Ten anymore because we're scared. And then magically their records improved because they're only playing the ACC. If the Big Ten said, hey, we're going to go ahead and not play ACC anymore. Like, we just don't care. And so, like, Penn State would never happen again. Penn State plays Temple and whatever. I think this is the same point I made last week. Penn State plays Temple and Buffalo every year instead. They win those games 95% of the time. The Big Ten looks awesome because all their losses are to SEC schools that are good, right? Oh, Penn State beat Auburn to start the year? Awesome. And they're undefeated in the Big Ten. Holy, we got to put them ranked 4th or whatever they are now, because there's no way for them to lose at this point. They could lose to Ohio State. Oh, wait, Ohio State's already ranked high? Well, we can't make them fall that much. Because I think that's where the SEC right now is kind of upset, because Bama blew it. They lost to Vanderbilt. It wouldn't have mattered if they lost to Texas or Georgia, whatever. They lost to Vanderbilt. And that's as bad as losing to an ACC school that's not Florida State or Clemson, right? That's like losing to Georgia Tech or something. And you're like, whoa, what are you doing? So they had to drop them. Like when Penn State loses to Pitt and they use that against them and they keep them out of the playoffs, Bama lost to Vanderbilt. Luckily this year the playoff has expanded, so that loss might not kill them. But that looked like bad signs to me of having a defense that other teams can scheme against. Maybe Georgia and their furious comeback kind of gave something away that works against Bama. I don't know. People said that was just a lucky comeback. They could have won the game. If their guy could tackle that receiver one-on-one, who knows what would have happened? Their last touchdown was like the crazy jumping wide receiver play, wasn't it? So Vanderbilt took that away. It reminds me of like when Penn State that year, they had Saquon Barkley and their other offense was just throwing jump balls. And they beat Wisconsin with that, but they couldn't beat USC with it. And they didn't beat Michigan. Michigan killed them that year, I think. Yeah, that was the year I think Michigan killed them. And they lost to Pitt and they kept out of the playoffs and went to the Rose Bowl. When they really should have been in the playoffs and it wouldn't have mattered. But yeah, that's where I think we're at the point now where you're going to have some heavy hitters that with this Big Ten and SEC alliance thing, even pre-alliance, right now the polls are so stacked because the Big Ten and the SEC took the top programs from the Pac-12 and the Big 12. There's no other way to get in. If one of the top programs like Florida State's down right now, they're not giving...
No, we're experiencing a Glenissance.
Well, they're not giving Pitt the benefit of the doubt, right? Pitt's 5-0. They're not magically ranked 11th. No, they're ranked 22nd. Doesn't matter what the schedule is. They didn't lose to Vanderbilt. Like, they beat Cincinnati. They beat West Virginia. They beat North Carolina. Are they winning big? No. But just keep winning, and they'll eventually make the playoffs, most likely. Miami's been squeaking by, needing refs' help and stuff. So what's the difference? Miami's up there, and Clemson. I honestly don't think Miami would get the benefit of the doubt. If Miami lost, they would fall faster than Mizzou. Right? Mizzou's the other one where their coach was talking a lot of crap, so it makes me laugh. that his team just got annihilated by A&M. Right? Last year he was one of the most vocal ones against Harbaugh and the sign stealing. Bro, doesn't matter. Your team just got crushed by A&M. Could you imagine if Michigan would have played them last year? It doesn't matter what their team did against Ohio State. A&M is built like Michigan was built, where you're just getting power run on the face, and you wouldn't have stopped it. We know that. We just saw it. So that made me laugh watching that game. They couldn't do anything. They're just watching them run all over them, dude. It was hilarious. So yeah, some teams aren't set to stop that smash mouth play. But like BYU undefeated, Iowa State undefeated, ranked 11th. They have to stay undefeated. I mean, they're going to take the highest Big 12 and ACC school anyway. But if you want to get 2 teams in, like how do you break this deadlock? Ohio State 2, Oregon 3, Penn State 4. That's hilarious. If they do a round robin and beat each other,
just hope that they run its course. And
you want 9 Windiana in there, right? They're 6-0, baby. They're going to beat Michigan. That's Signetti. That's your IUP guy.
There it is.
Undefeated. He was there. He said it at the homecoming that Michigan sucks. Maybe he was right. Maybe he knew. I mean, when he said that, Michigan had just won the national championship, so he was wrong. But he was right about Ohio State sucking. If he beats Ohio State this year, they might as well just build a statue to him. Indiana last time was close with Penix and the new Alabama coaching staff, right? That was at Indiana during the COVID year when they were like 6-0 or whatever, and they lost to Ohio State, which would have been their playoff appearance. So Indiana's been close. How are they the closest out of other Big Ten schools on the East Coast? I don't know. Right? No recruit is going to say, "Hey, you want to go to Rutgers, like in New Jersey, like outside of New York, or like Maryland, like by DC." It's like, I'll go to Indiana. Where's that by? Like
nowhere.
Oh, okay. Is it by Indianapolis? Like, I don't think so, bro. Is Rudy? You can watch Notre Dame's close. You can go there on the weekend. Even if you want to go there, you probably don't even want to go there either. So it's like Purdue doesn't even want to be associated with the state, right? They just have their own thing going, like Clemson. But I don't know. A&M 5-1, like they're going to start to sneak up. LSU still 4-1, but Brian Kelly, can he get it done? That USC win, USC lost. It's like, how bad is USC and how bad is Michigan? But it doesn't matter because USC beat LSU. Michigan beat USC. By proxy, Michigan is 1 better, or actually 2 better than LSU, right? At all times. I don't care what the ending record is, but I can count that as a moral victory. That's called Michigan State math, Matt. Write that down.
Michigan State math.
Anytime, well, if Michigan State were to beat Michigan last year and they won the national championship, that's a +1 natty for Michigan State, dude. They could have claimed that. They probably would have put a banner up, beat Michigan that one time. Like in 2021, when Michigan beat them, or Michigan State beat Michigan, and then Michigan won the Big Ten. That was like an asterisk Big Ten title for Michigan State. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not.
Yeah, Mel Tucker, he kind of blew things up, like all over his laptop. But we'll see what happens because he's now getting a lawsuit against him. Did you know that? I don't even know if I could. So he came out and insinuated that Brenda Tracy, is that the lady's name?
Yes.
So he was saying, or I guess his legal counsel, I don't know if it was actually him or what. I don't know all the details, but he made it seem like she had an inappropriate relationship with, was it Stoudemire? One of the basketball coaches, randomly, right? Or no, who's the guy from, was it Penny Hardaway? Who was coach of like Memphis or something? So he was throwing out shade that she had inappropriate relationships basically with other married coaches and that she came on to him. Her lawyer's saying that that's demonstrably false. Like, I mean, they could subpoena the other guy's phone records or whatever, see if they've even ever met up. And she's hitting him for millions of dollars. So I'm thinking that she has proof that that's never happened and he's going to get hammered. He basically ruined his entire life on one Zoom call or whatever he was doing, which is insane to me. And I can't even make fun of Michigan State for that. But I think their coach with hire was great, if we're being honest. But it's going to take them a little bit to get rebuilt back up in the new Big Ten. Because you're at a point now, and this goes to like even Florida State here, where Florida State stays in the ACC, to you, what would be a successful year? Like, do you want them? Like, how many years would they have to make the playoffs in like a 5-year span?
I would like to see them make it at least 3 of the next 5. I think that's reasonable.
I would agree. I would say 2 to 3, because I'm thinking that. Well, I don't want to really count Miami, but I'm thinking that out of 5 years, you got to hope that Clemson probably is going to win it twice. You're hoping that you can even them up with twice, and then there's going to be a weird year where Pitt wins it or someone else. That's how I would look at the Big Ten too. Like, not now with how big the Big Ten has gotten, but in the past, like I was thinking about it, when Harbaugh went on his 3-year run, that has to eat Ohio State up, because in a 5-year span, they're expecting to win probably three Big Ten championships or whatever. They had been splitting with Michigan State. They won a couple in a row, and then Michigan starts winning them. That has to hurt, because winning 3 in a row and then them winning a national championship is almost like going nuclear. So now you have bigger conferences, and they're talking about bringing back split titles, which I like, because I'm all bored. I don't want to see the smaller schools fall away. Indiana's having a great year, right?
But I feel like think that ship is already starting to kind of sail.
No, I think it's coming back, because if the way the thing's set up now, all they have to agree upon is to get rid of the Big Ten championship game and make that first round a play-in. I think that's what the SEC and the Big Ten want. They're saying that they want 4 auto bids. You can have a 4-game showcase instead of a Big Ten championship weekend, where you have the number 1 seed play the 8 seed, the number 2 seed play the 7 seed, whatever, like in the entire Big Ten. And then that happens as a play-in game. Doesn't matter for the Big Ten regular season title, right? Whoever has the top record, if it's a tie, you both get to claim it. Hell, we can joke about it. Michigan and Ohio State have both claimed Big Ten East Division titles when they haven't played in the championship game. So it's already still happening. Like, I think Urban Meyer had like a back-to-back-to-back shirt made, which is insane, because Michigan was winning the Big Ten championship that year. Like, I think it was Urban. Or no, it would have been Ryan Day. Yeah, because Urban had got fired that year, didn't it? Was it that the same year he got fired that everything happened? Or no, that was a couple years prior. I don't remember when the shift happened, but that's the one thing that I think some of these other schools like Indiana or even Rutgers, like, they blew it, but they had a chance to kind of run the table because they had an easy schedule. If they go undefeated, yeah, they might get crushed by Oregon or Ohio State this year. If they didn't have to play that game that didn't count, they would already be in the pre-playoffs, right? Because I think the way the Big Ten and the SEC are saying is that, hey, we're having our showcase, our 4 games on Fox, NBC, and CBS all want a different game. Fox will get 2 or something. Like, they'll have one Friday night. That might be the 5-4 game. That would be like the old Pac-12 spot. Then Fox has a noon game, which could be whatever. That could be the championship game, or maybe NBC gets the 1 versus the 8. Fox will probably get the 1 versus the 8, because then they can showcase like Ohio State or whatever team is on top. That's it. All 4, whoever wins those 4 games, they get put into the regular bracket. In the meantime, they're also cutting the Big 12 and the ACC off at the knees, right? Because they're then conference championship games, because they have a smaller conference right now. That's their play-in game. So the Big Ten can be like, oh yeah, you guys, we got our play-in games. You guys get your 1 play-in game, and you'll enjoy it. And then at the same time, some of these other smaller conferences, who knows? Like I've been saying all along, they need to just do an alliance where, hey, the MAC plays Conference USA every year. They start their year a week early. They get a thing by the NCAA, and they have a cross championship game that they put forth the winner and say that's who is going to represent our two conferences in the championship game or in the playoffs. And I think the college football playoff would allow that to happen. Because right now you have, a Power 4 and then 6 other conferences, including the Pac-12, which isn't going to be the Pac-12 anymore. But if the Pac-12 and the Mountain West got together and said, hey, our conference is going to have a joint championship game, and we want that to be an automatic bid to the playoffs, I think the committee would see that, all right, we're checking 2 conferences off. We're never going to give them an at-large bid. So it doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and check that off. What are the odd chances of like Oregon State running the table and being high enough to get in if they're not conference champs? Probably low. So then I think if all it takes is one domino to fall, and magically you go from a 12-team playoff to a 16-team playoff, where each conference gets one auto bid, and some of these smaller conferences get a joint bid, but the Big Ten and the SEC get 4 auto bids, and then you have like 3 at large or whatever it would be, 4 at large that just get put in for whatever. So it's almost like, oh, that's where Notre Dame lands, right?
Well, that's where I get frustrated, because it's like I don't want just off of like pure financials that Notre Dame gets a seat in, or that a random Indiana gets in because the Big Ten's guaranteed 4 spots.
Well, that's why I think they have the play-in game. That's the only way I think they can pitch it to make sense. Because like Notre Dame, they could say, hey, we're going to give the ACC 2 playoff spots. Like if Notre Dame joins the ACC, then you don't really need to have an at-large, right? You would have, well, I guess if it's a 12-team playoff, you get 4 from the Big Ten, 4 from the SEC, that's 8. You get 1 from the ACC, 1 from the Big 12, that's 10. There are 6 other conferences. You combine those to 3. That gives you a 13-team playoff. 14, 15, 16, that's 3 at-large teams to get you to 16. And Notre Dame then has to be happy, because you would have to imagine that the Big 4, Big 12, or Big 10 and the SEC schools are all going to be ranked in the top 12. Most likely the winners. But it also is giving an upset chance to say like a USC or a Michigan this year that might have struggled. Like Michigan can't decide on a quarterback. They're struggling. What if they just finally put it together late in the year, beat Ohio State? It's all for nothing. But then what if they had a play-in game against Penn State? They didn't get to play Penn State in the regular season. Big Ten could set it up so you avoid rematches too, which I think would add excitement between the fans. Because like there are some teams like A&M. They said A&M hasn't played Georgia at home ever as a member of the SEC. I think I saw an A&M fan post that over the weekend. How is that possible? They've been in there since like 2014, like 10 years. Like, you don't think the schedule makers one time said, oh yeah, we should probably have Georgia go to College Station that one time. No one ever thought of that. So now with like this, hey, they never play each other. They meet it's a home game. It's a neutral site. The Big Ten is so wide that they could have rotating neutral sites. Indianapolis, Detroit, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, if they really wanted to. That would kind of kill Pitt fans. But let's be real. Put it in Cleveland. Put it down in LA. Right? Put it at Seattle. Like the Seahawks Stadium, if they would want to do it. Put it in Las Vegas, even though there's no team there. Do like a Field of Dreams, just build one random cornfield in like Iowa/Nebraska. Put one there. Like it wouldn't really matter wherever they put it. Chicago. And then you just rotate those 4 and have cities bid on them. But they're all close enough that what's the difference if a team has to travel to Chicago versus traveling to Minnesota, right? Or hell, maybe whoever has the highest seed, they just want the home game. And you're thinking, well, it's going to be most of the time the higher seeds are going to come from our gigantic stadium teams. They're going to make so much money at home, and you do a split gate. I mean, if Northwestern made it, their stadium is so small, and it's like a high school stadium right now, to be honest. You don't think they'd be pumped if they got to split gate with Ohio State? They'd probably have a party. So that's how I'm looking at it. The conferences are getting too big, and you have too many historic powers that you can't just say, oh, we're just going to do all at large if you're like the ACC, because it won't matter. The room for error for the ACC right now is so slim that, yeah, right now they have two teams in, but Clemson and Miami are going to eliminate each other. Is Pitt going to be able to work their way in, or are they going to get eliminated too? We have to wait and find out. And it's only year one, so maybe this year will be a good case where maybe it evens out. But like the Big Ten is so stacked with those three teams at the top, and all it takes is Indiana to sneak in there, or like Michigan or USC to sneak back up there. You have four teams right there. They're all going to get in. Like if Michigan, yeah, they lost to Washington. That's only 2 losses. Michigan's the only 2-loss team that's ranked still. If they win out and are able to beat one of Oregon and one of Ohio State and lose the other one, they're going to be 9-3. They're most likely going to be right on the edge, if not in the playoffs. And they don't have to play another game. Where Miami might drop a game, they have to do a play-in game with Clemson for the ACC championship. That the loser of that is out, and Michigan would be in. That has to be a kick in the teeth, right? Their championship game, as long as they keep winning, is going to be the Oregon or the Ohio State game. And guess what? They get 2 chances because there's 2 games they could win that would put them over the top, at least as the next highest team to get in with 3 losses if they were to lose the other one. I think beating Oregon and then losing to Ohio State might be worse because that's the last game of the year. So they would probably fall. If they lose to Oregon, they're going to fall, and then they could win a couple games to climb back up. Beat Ohio State, I think they would be firmly in the playoffs. Just historically how the polls have worked. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about college football?
I was actually, even though Florida State lost to Clemson, I thought the change in quarterback kind of confirmed some things that I thought was going on. Just in general, there should have been the move to Brock Glenn, and DJ should have been benched sooner. But I feel like it was almost a business decision. There was so much NIL money being put up front that Norvell kind of has been feeling more obligated to try to make this situation work.
Well, that's where I'm hearing the same things for some of the Sharon Moore stuff, where, hey, he wanted to play so-and-so quarterback, but there's injury issues, and then trying to be transparent. Plus, he has NIL stuff tied up with like certain players getting certain amount of touches, and I'm thinking, if that's the case, the coach kind of has to just draw a line. And I almost wonder too, with Mike Gundy, I texted you about it. Their team has looked awful. Mike Gundy has said that when the season starts, the NIL stuff stops. And I wonder if he had made promises to some of these guys to get them there. They're not getting touches. Guess what? They're not going to try in the weight room.
Well, and I feel like you're seeing that more right now with players starting to just opt out sooner and sooner. That it's like, I'm seeing more players that are just saying, I'm going to take a red shirt right now and hit the portal. And they're calling it quits right now. And like, I feel like that's another extension of this NIL game that we're seeing, is that guys are like, well, why should I try to play currently? Like, you had UNLV's quarterback was the first one to pull it, where they started off really hot and were undefeated. And then it was like, Yeah, I think I'm just going to wait. Now that I've increased my value, I think I'm just going to hold off to see what other NIL opportunities I can pick up along the way. As I feel like that's such a terrible look, but at the same time, I understand you want to try to capitalize on as much of this NIL stuff as you can while you're in college.
And that's where I think we're going to see a lot of coaches like Sharon Moore, first year as a coach. If players start to opt out, that's not going to look good for building your first recruiting class. Where a guy like Norvell's been there a few years, won the ACC, he can sell something. But I think some of these newer coaches are going to be having a harder time building something with guys that might be only NIL focused. And I wonder how that's going to change some of the program stuff. I mean, honestly, we saw it with Jimbo Fisher at A&M. Guys are getting brought in for money, whatever value. They collect their check. They're not working hard. It's not working out. It's not like he magically forgot how to coach from Florida State to A&M. It's all locker room stuff. That's why I was wondering, if I'm West Virginia, give him a chance. Who cares if he doesn't like to do NIL recruiting or whatever? West Virginia's not getting that done. He might, if he's hungry and he wants to prove that he's not a forgotten one-trick pony coach that won that one time at Florida State and then flamed out at A&M, he might be driven enough to get West Virginia into the playoffs, and then they can use their transfer portal. Because I feel like West Virginia was kind of a great secondary school in the 2000s, right? Guys that were top recruits that didn't get into XYZ school always found their way at West Virginia. I feel like they could be transfer portal U. Kind of like how Colorado's been, just without the hype and the Dion stuff. Get guys that are just looking for a place to transfer. Because I saw a list someone compiled of all the guys that had entered the transfer portal from lower schools that were awesome, couldn't land a Power 5 spot, and are now doing awesome at another smaller school. And they're wondering, could these guys have been great at a Power 5 program? We don't know. But what if West Virginia was just hey, take, and then just cut them? And then they redshirt? I don't know if they got rid of the scholarship limits, right? But if you're doing enough NIL, I'm sure West Virginia can beat Texas State or whatever in NIL. Maybe I'm wrong. But Coastal Carolina, that guy went to NC State, hasn't worked out. He's kind of benched now. Or they said he's injured or whatever. If he goes and wants to play another year, what if he goes to West Virginia? It looked like NC State didn't have any offense for him. The offense just wasn't set up for him. And obviously, NC State's offense isn't good. So it's not good for anybody, right? He made a bad decision going there. What if you go to West Virginia now? Get Jimbo there. He can be the savior of forgotten kids in program from West Virginia. That's what I would do. Just get West Virginia to come back. And some of these Big East schools that were awesome, South Florida, they almost beat Bama last year. Get it together. Has to hurt watching Central Florida get in. But I know we're going long. I had some of the Connor Stallion stuff. I sprinkled it in throughout the show. I was going to talk about it. Maybe I'll add some more next week. I didn't listen to the whole interview. If you want to listen to it, go out there. It's great. He talked about some of the Ohio State stuff and how they were already light years ahead of breaking down stuff. And he said that a lot of times his job wasn't even to steal signs. It was just to let coach know when the other team was done signaling so that it would be safe for him to give their signal so that they didn't have enough time to audible. Because what Ohio State was doing is he said the one year they did a hard count so many times. They would do the hard count to see if Michigan had any guys that would shake they were going to blitz. And then they would audible to whatever their sign stealer said that Michigan had called. Safety blitz, go ahead. And then they would call a new play. And he said they were getting 9 yards. Every time they hard counted, they were getting 9 yards of play. So his job was to just sit there, wait till they gave the hard count signal or whatever it was, And then he would tell them, like, hold off, they're going to do a hard count. Then they did the hard count. And he said the next year they only did 3 hard counts at the beginning of the game, and they never went back to it because they knew that they were waiting for the hard count. So that was his job, just standing there being like, all right, good. You can signal in defense now. They're done playing around. Or like, hey, they're signaling in a second play. Wait, they're going to change formation. You know how some teams come out and change the formation? That would be kind of his job. Like, oh, that's going to be a false formation. Just hold on before you call your play. He said he never called any plays. The defensive coordinators always wanted to call their own stuff. But that's it. If you like some football stuff like that, I'll listen up, give my thoughts on it. Hopefully we have some good games. Oregon, Ohio State this week. Hopefully it lives up to the hype. But thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.